This video is about Hadoop Introduction, and this is the second video about learning about the big data. And we'll look into what Hadoop is all about. So Apache Hadoop is an open source software, and this is one of the software which is used to analyze big data, and it is based on the open source software framework used for distributed storage and process of data. So the data set we are considering here are big data, and one of the softwares which can analyze this is an open software from Apache which is known as Hadoop. So as you seen in the last lecture, there are big data considers a huge amount of data, and there's some software which is used to analyze this data, and one of the software is Hadoop. Hadoop is divided into two main parts. One is the Mapreduce and the other is Hdfs, or the distributed storage. So the software Hadoop has two main parts. One is a Mapreduce and the other is Hdfs. So there is a function of both these parts. Hdfs basically acts as a storage for the data. So Mapreduce is a programming model, an associated implementation for processes. So this is how we define, or what Mapreduce is all about. It's an associated implementation for processing and generating big data sets with a parallel distribution system, or the distributed algorithm cluster. So Mapreduce is a programming model and an associated implementation for processing and generating big data sets with a parallel distributed algorithm on cluster. So Mapreducing is something which analyzes the data, and when you see that it has two parts, it will map and then it will reduce. And the Hdfs is a distribution system. This manages storage of information across machine called distribution file system. So the big data is stored in Hdfs. So the data which you want to analyze or want to find some meaning, the big data, you put that into an Hdfs storage system, and then that is analyzed by Mapreduce algorithms. So Hdfs is based on GFS. Hdfs is like a bucket where all your data sits before you can analyze that. And if you look at Mapreduce, it's a tool that will actually get all your data produced. So the Mapreduce is a function which will process your data or analyze your data using a certain program which will be written in Java. So that's how the full process works. The Mapreduce will store the data, and the Mapreduce will analyze the data, and the Hdfs stores the data. So speaking about this in other words, Hdfs is a storage layer, one of the most reliable one, and Mapreduce is a batch processing engine. So that's how you define both these. There's also a resource management layer known as Yarn. So that's another component of the Hadoop called Yarn, which is a resource management layer. Also there are 5 daemons which run inside the Hadoop. So there are the 2 layers of Hadoop. So daemon is a computer program that runs as a background process. So daemon usually takes batch jobs and it will run that in background. So the 5 daemons are Nemedon, which runs on Hdfs, data node runs on Hdfs, resource manager runs on Yarn, node manager runs on Yarn, and there is also now we'll look into how does Hadoop work. So the step 1 in the working, which you can basically, this is a basic overview of how this whole system works. This is not a definitive way, but it's an overview to understand. So the client will submit the data, and the Hdfs will store the data and Mapreduce will process the data. So if you want to analyze some data, a huge amount of data, like a website information, website browsing history, or social media data, or anything, you can submit that data, and the data will be stored in Hdfs, and Mapreduce will process that data. Named node. stores the metadata. So whatever metadata of the file, the data will be stored in form of some file, and the name node will store the metadata of that file, and data node stores the actual data. So name node will store the data like the file name and the number of variables or something like that. So and the data node will store the actual data what is contained, like the columns and the rows in that data. And the step 2 is that data is broken into blocks, and the blocks are stored on cluster. So the Mapreduce has two daemons. Resource manager breaks data to task, and node manager works on this task. So again, the data is broken into task, and each task is added to a node manager who will work on that. So that was how basically the Hadoop worked. And once all the nodes are processed, the data is written back to the Hdfs. So that's all about the overview of the Hadoop system. And one thing you need to understand is that Hadoop is a software which is used to process large amount of data, and it has two parts. One is a Mapreduce and one is a Hdfs. There are two main parts, and it will break down the data into blocks, and it will store the data in different blocks, and the different nodes will work on the data, and the output will again be stored in the Hdfs system, and it will be outputted to the user. So that's all. If you like this video, please do subscribe, like and comment.